right, so I want to talk about confidence. And a lot of people that I've met who have struggled with confidence have a lot of issues understanding what confidence is, where it comes from, and if it's something that's obtainable or something that you can actually develop. And I'll definitely say with confidence that is something you can get and you can work on over time. It's not something that you just appear to have one day. Some people that you observe, you might go out and in a social environment, you'll be able to see people that you perceive to have confidence and then other people that don't necessarily stand out as a confident person. So, when you go into that social situation, you're at a party or a bar or at your sport club, and there's one or two people that stand out that have that aura about them, that they've got a bit more confidence, that they are comfortable in their own skin and they engage with the room. They basically dominate the room in a social setting. And they're usually the people that are told that they're confident. And in the past, I've been told by my friends and people I meet that I do have a general sense of confidence about myself. And that got me thinking, why is that the case? So I've put a lot of time into working out what the basis of confidence is, if there's actually a general confidence that exists. And I've come to a few conclusions and I want to talk about them. I've got a lot of notes on my whiteboard, so I'll go through all those points in this video. Now, to start off with, what is confidence? And what is the thing that creates a base confidence? And it is a skill base. It is a skill set that gives you a sense of confidence. And I've identified a couple of key confidence skills that will give you a sense of that general confident aura that you might see in other people. So, of these two skills that I think are the most important, that before you do anything in life, you need to develop these two skills. The first one is communication. Once you start working out how to communicate, your life gets so much easier and you actually unlock different parts of the life that you want to live through being able to communicate. So communication can help you in heaps of ways, in your relationships, in your business and work environment, social settings, engaging with your family, talking to people that are older than you, younger than you, people from different economic backgrounds. There's so many different ways to communicate, and a few basic aspects of communication are body language, eye contact, tonality, the volume of your voice, the pace in which you speak. And the best way to develop this skill is literally by doing it. And in order to become a good communicator, you need to practice communicating in different settings with different types of people in order to learn how to interpret what they're communicating, to learn how to pitch your ideas and talk about what you want to talk about and be understood correctly. So the way I learned how to communicate mainly was through work. When I worked in a hospitality environment, it was a very social job. If you don't work in a place that's very social, then you're going to have to compensate that in a different part of your life, whether it's outside of work on weekends, part of a sports club, whatever you do, you need to put yourself in a situation where you're communicating as much as possible in order to develop that sense of confidence. Because if you've got a deep knowledge on different topics and you can discuss things and you can be engaging and people will listen to you, then you're going to get the feedback that you're interesting. You're someone to engage with and socialize with. And when you've got a bigger social life, that develops confidence in itself. So being a better communicator unlocks all the different skill sets that you want to become confident in. And you've got to compartmentalize your confidence. You can't just assume that once you're confident at one thing, that means you're a confident person. That's not the case. A professional race car driver is not necessarily going to be super confident when it comes to coding. And the same thing, a tradesman that's a perfect stonemason, he's a master of his trade, isn't exactly going to know how to trim a tree. So you see what I'm saying? You've got to compartmentalize all your different skill sets and understand that confidence comes from competence. If you're competent at something, you become confident. If you're confident without competence, then you're just delusional. And we don't want to create delusional people. We want to create people that have capabilities and that are people that can get things done. So developing your communication skills is really the base of becoming that person with an aura of confidence. The second skill that is often overlooked, and some people don't even realize that this is a skill in itself. And through your communication skills, that is the gateway to developing the next skill, which is your learning skills. So your learning skills are going to be able to unlock new sub skills that you're going to develop. You're going to be able to develop them quicker and more efficiently if you've got a grasp of how you learn. So there's 4 levels of learning, 4 different ways that people learn. You may have heard it before. There's auditory, visual, kinesthetic, and reading and writing. Most people are predominantly one of those, if not a combination of those 4. And if you work out which one of those is your best way to learn, if you're a great reader and writer, you can literally go and read blogs, you can read books, you can read transcripts of people that have done that thing before, and you'll be able to get a better grasp of what to do in order to develop that skill. So start by doing that test and working out what way you learn better. Are you better with watching someone else do something first? Are you better learning by engaging, more of a kinesthetic learner? Or are you better at learning through listening to a podcast or having someone give you a set of instructions? There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can figure this out, but you should be able to work out if you're a good reader, if you're good at hands-on learning, and then you can learn these skills through that way. And a big part of learning is actually being able to pair yourself with a compatible mentor. So a mentor, a coach, a teacher, one of these people that have already walked the walk, they've already done this, they already know how to do it, they're successful at it, doesn't mean that they're going to be able to teach you the way that you best learn. A really good teacher, a really good coach, especially with classroom situations, team situations, it's never really one-on-one. It's one to many. Someone's teaching a bunch of people the same thing, but if that teacher is really good, they're going to adapt how they're teaching depending on who they're teaching. So at the end of the year, if you're in a high school environment or university environment, you remember at the end of the year, everyone got different grades. Not everyone got an A+. Not everyone passed. Some aspect of that is based on the compatibility between the teacher and the student in the way they teach. So you might find that there's a teacher that has all the knowledge in the world, but they don't know how to adapt to your teaching. Whereas you might find a teacher that knows 80% of what the better teacher knows, but they're more compatible with your teaching style, with your learning style. You're going to learn a lot faster. You're going to learn the right way, and you're not going to be disheartened by all the different factors that come into learning, all the hurdles that you might encounter. So the first thing you need to do when you're learning any skill, including communication, is pick someone as a mentor that has the tools to teach you the way you require to be taught. And that way you're going to be fast tracking your learning curve, and you're going to become a lot more proficient, and you're going to be able to start doing that thing, whether it's for business or a hobby or whatever the skill is. Life is full of skills. You need to become capable. So getting a mentor is the first step to doing that. And you can even indirectly get a mentor. You can Go online and find people. Let's say you want to become the best ping pong player in the world. You don't necessarily need to get a one-on-one coach at the beginning. You can watch videos. You can learn through reading books on ping pong. You can listen to ping pong podcasts, whatever it is, whatever's out there. Pair it with your learning style, and that's how you get started. So that's the two main skills: communication skills and learning skills. You've got to find a good mentor and pair yourself with that mentor. Now, once you've got the idea of starting to develop your communication skills and you figure out your learning skills and you develop those, there is a very simple process and a strategy. And if you've got a really good coach teaching you, they're going to teach you in this very simple way. There's a 2-step process to becoming capable in any specific skill. The first step is refinement. Refining your technique, refining your strategy, your approach, the way you do something is the first step to becoming capable at something. Now, there are 4 levels of competency that you need to be aware of. So then when you start a new skill, you can assess where you're at that particular point in time. The first stage of competence is when you are unconsciously incompetent, which means you don't know what you don't know. Take, for instance, if you're trying to learn a sport, if you want to become a basketball player, right? You've never set foot on a court, you've never thrown a basketball, you don't know what to expect. And you get to the basketball training and everyone's been given the task to shoot free throws. So you start shooting free throws and you don't know how to shoot the ball. You don't know what the wrong technique is. You don't know what the right technique is. You're just doing what you feel is right and you're just going for it. This is where the first step of refinement comes into play. Ideally, your coach is going to observe what you're doing and then they're going to come up to you and say, hey, I'm watching you shoot the ball. You're shooting air balls one after the other. And I want to make you aware that you're not bending your knees. So that is the refinement of your technique in the way you bend your knees. So once you refine the way you bend your knees, you're going to actually position yourself, bend your knees, throw the ball, and you might actually get it in. You might have a near miss, but you're going to get closer and you're going to get better because that refinement was a good refinement that you made. And that's going to bring you to the second stage of becoming capable and developing your confidence in a skill, which is repetition. Repeating that new strategy once you've refined it is going to develop that skill a lot further. And you need to repeat it a lot. If you look at Bruce Lee is renowned for being an amazing martial artist and historically like a great actor, capable at so many things, super confident. He would sit at his kicking bag and punching bag and he would do 5,000 punches. He would do 5,000 kicks every day for years. And after he got through that repetition phase, originally he refined his technique. Then he did 5,000 a day, bang, bang, bang every day until he got to the stage where he needed to refine again. And this is the cycle that you will go through when you're developing any skill is you start by refining it and then you repeat to become capable at that technique, which brings you to the second stage of competence. Initially, you were unconsciously incompetent. You didn't know what you didn't know. Now, you know that you've got to bend your knees when you're throwing the basketball. Bruce Lee knew how he needed to turn his hips to make the roundhouse kick as strong as possible and hit it in the same spot all the time without losing his balance. Once you repeat that long enough, there are a certain thousand amount of times where you become unconsciously, no, that was the first stage. You become consciously incompetent, where you now know what it's supposed to look like and you're getting better, you're improving, but you're not quite there yet. As you keep repeating and repeating and repeating, you will go from incompetence to competence. So when you become the third stage, which is consciously competent, that is where you know how the technique should be done. You've thrown 10,000 free throws. You know how to bend your knees. You know how to generally shoot in the right direction. And that's when you are consciously competent. Now, most people will live in the consciously competent stage for a long time because you will keep refining and you will keep repeating after you've made these refinements. Once you get to an elite stage where you are going to be so proficient at something that you don't even need to think about it because you've done it so many times and you've refined it to a certain point, that is where you reach the maximum level of competency, which is unconsciously competent. You don't even need to think. Someone can throw you a ball at any position and then you know exactly what your body's going to do because of the muscle memory, and you're just going to shoot that basketball and it's going to go in 99% of the time. That is the difference between not knowing how to do something and not knowing how it should be done to being so good at something that you don't even need to think about it. Now, when you're consciously competent, the third stage, you're already going to have confidence. As you're getting closer to that point, when you're consciously incompetent, your confidence is already going to build because you're seeing progress. If you've ever started going to a gym and that first 2-3 months that you've embarked on that new thing, you've probably heard of virgin gains, where somebody's never gone to the gym. They start going to the gym and they see results. They either put on muscle, lose weight, get stronger, lift heavier weights. One of these things that you see is going to give you an initial boost in confidence, and that'll springboard you into that competent stage. So living in that consciously competent place is a good thing to do. And if you live there long enough, eventually you're going to get to the unconsciously competent stage. And that is when you've repeated something thousands of times and the refinement is almost perfect, and you've gotten to the point where you know almost everything that is wrong with a technique and almost every way that it can be done correctly. And at that point, you'll have a new journey, which you can become a pioneer. You can start creating new things. You can start creating new techniques on how to do something. If you're an artist and you learn how to draw, you can learn how to use different mediums. You can use different paints. You can do different scale. There's so many different things that you can do, and that's when the creative ideas can start flowing. But you need to start from the bottom. You need to learn what you don't know first, and having a mentor will really help you with that. Knowing how you learn with your learning skills and building from there. And if you've got really good communication skills, you'll be able to communicate where you're at, not just by showing your skills or lack of skills, but also by communicating and saying, this is what I don't know. This is what I need to know. This is where I want to be. And if you can convey your goals to your coach and you can tell your coach what you want to achieve, they're going to be able to tailor exactly what the lesson needs to be for you to become confident in the fastest amount of time and develop your skills very quickly. So logically, we need to think that everyone is born closer to each other than when we die. All right? When we're born, everyone has the similar amount of potential to become any certain thing. When we die, that's when people leave a legacy behind, and some people don't leave a legacy behind. Some people are going to be born with the same opportunity as everyone else, but through their life, their decisions, their choices, and the skills that they develop are going to be separating you from the next person. So if you have these mindsets that are limiting beliefs, and there's a lot of mindset tricks when it comes to confidence. There's heaps of things that are going to be hurdles for you, which I'll talk about in this video. But the first one is the limiting belief that, oh, that person's got talent. If you base things on talent, you're going to be surprised when you think of people that have worked very hard and overtaken the people with talent. It's the whole nature versus nurture debate. If you've heard about nature being, if it's in your nature to do something versus if you're nurtured to do something, I'm very much a nurture believer. I think if you are taught how to do something, you are developing that skill, you can be better than the naturals, especially if the naturals rely just on their nature and they just rely on talent. You're going to be way better than that person. Hard work always outweighs talent, especially if the talent gets lazy. And it's very easy for people that are talented, people that have had things just come to them in life. They don't really have an incentive to work because they just naturally have magnetism towards what they want. They often lose to the people that are working day and night. If you look at Kobe Bryant was a massive, famous basketball player that was renowned for his hard work. He would get up at 3, 4 in the morning. I don't know how early, but he would get up hours before his competition and he would train 2, 3, 4 times the amount of hours in a day that all of the competition. And he got to a point where years down the track, he was so far ahead of everyone else that even if they worked as hard as they could never catch up because he was compounding his hours that he was putting in. And at the beginning, he wasn't the MVP when he was a teenager. He wasn't the best basketball player from birth. He literally put the hard work in. But when you see someone at the finish line, you assume that they're the best, and sometimes you assume that they were just destined to be the best and they didn't really work to get there, but they definitely did. And if you don't put the work in yourself, well, you have zero chance of getting there. If you put in the work, then you have some chance of achieving competence in whatever skill you want to develop. So don't limit your beliefs with the idea that some people are born with privilege and other people aren't born with privilege. Because in this day and age, the privilege that you have, most people have, and the disadvantages that you have, most people have in general. Especially if you've got a smartphone that you're watching this video, if you've got a computer, then you're pretty well off. You're not struggling. So don't limit your beliefs on the situation you're born in. Because a lot of these basketball players, they came from poverty anyway. They came from tough upbringings and they worked hard to get out of it. You know, I think more than half of the billionaires in the world are self-made. They didn't inherit their billions. Not that, you know, you might not want to be a billionaire, but these things don't happen by accident, and people don't stay without any skills throughout their whole life, despite having worked hard. Most people that work hard get somewhere. They might not get to the top, but they get higher than they would have if they didn't do any work. Now, continuing on the idea of mindset, there are some tricks and little tweaks in your thoughts and the voice in your head. I've talked about that previously, about the voice in your head and the tone of the voice in your head and how you talk to yourself. Because a lot of people that lack confidence, I've found that when they talk about themselves, they have a very negative mindset. Now, that could be ingrained in them from when they were children. They might have had a terrible upbringing, for sure. But it's not something that can't be changed, all right? I'm lucky that I was loved and I had so much positivity, but I do know lots of people that were confident or are confident that did not have a great upbringing, that had huge challenges in their life. So again, where you come from doesn't determine where you're going to be. And changing the tone of the voice in your head and your perception of your capabilities, because if you change the perception of your capabilities, you're going to be able to change what your capabilities are. Your level of confidence is based on what you think. about your capabilities. And sure, some people will be a little bit delusional and think if they can achieve a 10 out of 10, when in reality it's most likely that they're going to achieve an 8 out of 10, there is no harm in being a little bit delusional with what you think you can achieve. Because if you are conservative all the time, if you don't fail, and failure is another thing I want to talk about, but not just yet. If you don't push yourself and you never fail, you're probably not trying hard enough. If you don't actually experience struggle in getting to the next level, if you're just always winning and you're always succeeding in what you do, you're not reaching whatever the next level or the ceiling is. I don't like the idea of a ceiling because that is a limit. You don't want to put limits on what you can achieve. If you want to become that sports person, martial artist, chef, salesperson, whatever skill you want to develop, you've got to have a strong perception of your capabilities. And it's not bad to have a little bit more than what you think your maximum is. If you think that you can make $100,000 a year, there's no harm in aiming for 200,000. There's no harm in doing that and increasing that a little bit. If you want to be state champion at baseball, there's no harm in trying to be national champion, because then state champion is just a checkpoint on your next journey. And then once you become state champion, then you're on the way to become national champion, then you can become the world champion. You see what I'm saying? If you just perceive, oh, I just want to lose 2 kilos and then I'll be happy. If you've got more weight to lose, you might get to the 2 kilos and then you'll say, oh, I'm there. And then you'll just take the foot off the pedal and then say, okay, I'm there now. I can stop doing what I was doing. And then you just put the 2 kilos on, and you'll probably put more than that on, and you'll become a lot worse off than you were at the beginning. But if you keep striving, and there's a difference between putting too much pressure on yourself and losing your way and not enjoying successes, but there is potential that you can put too much pressure on yourself. So find a good balance of where you want to be, where you're at, and closing the gap. Now, talking about failure, let's go into failure. Before I go to the next topic, I want to talk about the language that you use in your head. That's right. So if you have the perception of, I can't, I couldn't, that's too hard, you're telling yourself, you're basically spelling it out in your head, casting a spell on your own mind that you can't do something. If you believe that you can't do something, you definitely can't. At least if you think that you could do it, if you have that language that there is potential, it could happen, say to yourself, I could become national champion. If I do this, this, and this, I could. Instead of saying, no, I can't do that. It's way too hard. There's no point in even trying to do anything. You need to change that voice to a more optimistic voice. There is no harm in being optimistic. There's no harm in being a little bit delusional, because I've done it. I've started new skills, and as I've developed those skills, I've set new boundaries of what I could achieve. And 9 times out of 10, you get to a stage that is higher than you ever thought you would achieve. So, talking about this potentially delusional mindset, Jim Carrey, there's a story about Jim Carrey when he started with his film career. When he went from comedy to film, he was doing the movie The Mask, or it was leading up to the point of doing The Mask. And he was a comedian. He was making basically low income, like not much. And he wrote himself a check for $10 million. And he kept that check in his wallet for years and years and years. And most people looking at his career leading up to that point wouldn't have thought that that check in his wallet was anything beyond delusional. And then he got the contract for the Mask movie and he actually cashed the check in. So that mind trick, that spell casting that he did on himself actually worked. So you can't knock that. That's literally proof that you can change the way you see things. And before they are a reality, if you see them in your mind, then you will see them in reality. You can even see videos of Conor McGregor and how he talked to himself. All these successful people, most of them did not say, oh, I didn't think I'd ever become this. I didn't think I've ever become that. Most people had the determination to do what they wanted. They had these little things like an imaginary check in their wallet, which turned out to be real. But these little tricks, they do work. Now let's go on to failure. So the fact is, failure is disheartening. If you try to do something and you fail, if it's behind closed doors and nobody sees you, it's going to suck. You're going to be like, this is annoying. If you've ever been playing games and there's a point in a game where you just keep losing at that same point, and you just keep losing, you get so frustrated, you don't want to play the game anymore, and you just give up. That is easy to do if you let failure get to your mind and kill your mindset. But you've got to remember that success is linked to failure. You can't just let failure stop you. And especially if it's public, there's another element to failure, which is embarrassment. Success is linked to embarrassment. If you watch any sort of musicians, right? A lot of musicians, when they first start, they suck. A lot of musicians don't know how to play the music yet. And especially if music, in order to make money through music, in order to succeed, most people don't necessarily just play for themselves in a room. They're playing to other people. They're playing to a crowd of people. Originally, Queen came to Australia and they got booed off stage. And they show this in the Queen movie. The band gets on the stage, they start playing. There was a headline act that was a lot more famous and known in that area to the locals. And Queen wasn't doing what the crowd wanted. And then Freddie Mercury goes on the mic and says, we'll be back. We'll show you. And they persisted through that failure and they became arguably the most famous band in the world. And if they had have given up at that failure, because being booed off stage, it'd be a gut-wrenching, horrible feeling, especially if you're trying to do something good and it's not being received well. They're going to have a choice to make, and you have a choice to make every time you fail. Do you look at that failure as a lesson, a learning curve? Do you reflect on that failure and say, what could I do differently in the future? Do you take that failure in a negative way and say, they say I'm shit, so I'm shit. I'm not going to do this anymore. If you start a business and let's just say you've got a job, you're making good money, and then you decide I want to quit the job and start a business. And then you're not making any money from that business for 6 months and you get knocked back and rejected every time that you try and pitch your business services or product to a customer. Do you look at that failure and say, I'm going to quit? Or do you say, I just need to increase my competence. I need to become more confident because obviously my level of competence is not great enough for me to charge people what I'm doing, for what I'm doing. So that is where you've got to decide, is this where I need to do a refinement? Failure is a really good sign that you need to refine what you're doing. And success is another sign where you need to refine. Let me explain. If you fail something and you've done it a few times, you need to see if you're actually doing it right. And you need to assess if that technique is correct or if that strategy is potentially better suited for a different setting. If you haven't paired the strategy and the timing, there's so many levels to becoming confident in something that you need to really refine it correctly, especially if you're going to offer that to other people, and other people's opinions on that thing matters. So it's just like me making these videos. If I'm giving you great content and I'm talking about things that are relevant to you, then I'm going to get likes and views and people are going to share it and it's going to be great. If I'm not giving you the right content, if I'm not putting out what you want to take in, then the feedback's going to be there, or the lack of feedback is going to be there. So that's when I'll have to think, okay, I've got to refine this so then it's more suited to the application that I want to put it in. And then I'll become more confident and you'll become more confident in what you're doing. So success, on the other hand, if you are constantly succeeding, but it's the same safe success, instead of growing, if you're just plateauing, which plateauing is not necessarily a failure, you're still succeeding. If you're lifting weights and you can bench 100 kilos, but you have not tried to lift 110 kilos, you're just at 100, and you're always, every day that you go to do chest, you train that 100 kilo bench and it feels good, but you never push it beyond that. That is a time where you need to refine what you're doing. You need to lift heavier. It's very simple. And a lot of people stop refining and setting new goals and setting new horizons because they feel safe, because they're not failing. But remember, failure, embarrassment, all of these things are linked to success. So embrace failure and embrace the embarrassment, because ultimately you're judging yourself. If the voice in your head is putting you down, then you've got to change that. If that failure inspires you to change and refine, get the voice in your head to say, you know what, I could do this differently. What can I do differently? How can I make this better? That is a telltale sign and a trigger that should say, all right, I'm going to do this differently now. I'm going to go back to the drawing board and I'm going to change what I'm doing, because right now it's not working, or right now it's not growing. So always strive for growth. Once you get competent, try and get to the next stage and increase the boundary constantly, so then you can achieve more, especially once you reach a certain level of competence. Because getting stuck in a comfort zone is potentially dangerous and is going to give you a false sense of security, because there's always more battles. There's always more challenges. And if you don't push yourself towards those, then you're not going to know what they even are. You're not going to know if you even like them or not. And you might be selling yourself short by cutting your growth off. And we don't want that. So embrace the failure. And especially like music or business or even relationships, there's going to be some level of external judgment. And this is an interesting topic as well, because judgment, there are so many different layers to judgment. And I think an important thing to consider when it comes to judgment is, who is the person judging you? And by who, I mean, what are they to you? Are they a friend? Are they neutral? Are they someone that is against you? Are they someone that has that thing that you want? Somebody that doesn't have that thing that you want? Are they someone that cares about that thing you want? Or are they someone that is against that thing you want? Or is it someone that's neutral and they just don't care? So these things that I've listed off are going to determine what you do with that judgment. Is this person naturally judgmental and they're always devil's advocate and they just try and be a contrarian and just push these negative ideas because that's their personality? And on the other side, is this person always giving encouragement and positive reinforcement and they're not telling you the truth because they just want to be nice? There's always a different reason why people speak and communicate and judge the way they do. If you're getting positive reinforcement all the time, that's potentially going to keep you at a plateau. Whereas usually if somebody has the thing you want, somebody has the skill and they've achieved more than what you have, they're usually going to give you positive criticism. Now, getting criticism from people that either have that thing or are better than you at that thing is usually constructive, because especially if they're happy with where they're at and their trajectory of where they're going, they're not going to have any issue with helping you as well. Unless they're a competitor, unless this is a direct competitive environment, most of the time people are going to help you excel. All right, especially if they're on your side. If you play a sport with a friend, we'll stick on the basketball topic. Let's just say you've got a friend that is 1 year older than you, and they're playing in the next level of team. They're in the A's and you're in the B's. And you want to train with them because they've got better skill than you, and you want to learn the skill from them. And they come and say to you, hey mate, I see the way you're dribbling and I see the way you're passing. I don't think you're using your body in the correct way. I don't think your strategy is right. I think you could do better and you could improve that, because the way you've learnt right now, I don't think that's the right thing. So you can take that one of two ways. You can say, oh, screw this guy. He's judging me. He's telling me I'm shit. Or you could say, you know what? He's better than me. Listen, man, are you going to help me? Can you show me what you mean? And then through your learning skills, your communication skills are coming into play, because you're not taking it personally. You're interpreting that communication from that person judging you from a place of wanting to make you better. And then through your communication skills, you're going to be able to say, hey man, can you show me how to do what you're talking about? If I've got the ball next to you, you keep the ball and I'll keep the ball and we can dribble side by side. I'll try and keep up with you if you're a kinesthetic learner. Or you can say, can you show me? I want to watch you. I just want to stand on the boundary line and watch you dribble the ball so you can show me what you're talking about if you're a visual learner. Or you can get them to explain to you, or you can say, you can text them and you can say, hey man, can you text me some tips when you've got a chance? I'll take you out for, I'll get us like a burger or something, whatever it is. Exchange value. If you want something from someone, give something and they'll probably give you something back, and develop in that way. And having a tribe that is also on their confidence journey, that is developing their skills, is going to inspire you and you're going to inspire them and you're going to grow and excel. On the other hand, if there's a negative judgment coming towards you, then you've got to think, who is this person giving this negative judgment from a bad place? And that's where your communication skills will come into play, where you will say, all right, pragmatically, I've thought about this. This person is judging me. Most of the time, people judge you in a bad way to negatively judge you, because your success is exposing something in them that is a failure. Just remember that key point. Whenever someone is being negative towards you, potentially you're actually doing the right thing. Potentially you are doing something that they wish they could have done, but they never did, or they still haven't tried to do it. Your success exposes other people's failures. And that's the key point. If you know who's talking to you, you're going to be able to interpret it and do what you need to do with that information. And that might mean that if this person is in your life, if this person is just a bystander and they walk past, you're never going to see them again, that's fine. But if this is someone that you engage with often, then you're going to have to decide, do I scale back the amount of time that I spend with this person? Is this person affecting me more negatively than they are positively? If you care about them enough, if they're just going through a tough time, someone judging you and treating you like shit might be a time for you to say to them, is everything all right? Are you doing good? Because I'm not doing anything to you, but you are treating me this way and I'm doing good things. I don't know why you're giving me a hard time. They'll probably bite their tongue and they'll probably start telling you all the things that they really want to talk about. If this is a really good friend to you or a relative or colleague, someone that's important to your path, then you've got to decide if it's worth your time to give them that time. So judgment in a negative way can often tell you more about the other person than it does about you. And that just comes down to your ability to communicate and interpret what people mean. And as you expose yourself to more of this, you'll be able to make yourself aware straight away. You'll just be unconsciously competent when it comes to communicating. So that's another reason why communication, learning skills, those two skills are just massive when it comes to building confidence. And there is a certain point where you keep refining and you repeat for years and years. And it's like from being an apprentice to being a master. A master usually will have unbreakable confidence because they've gone through the repetition. They've refined everything to a certain degree and they've become pioneers. They've created new ways of doing things. That's one way of getting unbreakable confidence. But the fun way of getting unbreakable confidence is when you prove those really dark, hateful, judgmental haters wrong. And I've got a really cool story that this happened to me. I was working in a hospitality business, just working at a cafe, and I was wearing a uniform. I was serving people, serving coffee and cakes, and just dealing with all different people. And sometimes we'd get business people coming in, and there was this one guy that would come in, and I remember he was wearing a suit. He was older than me, and he had like grey hair. And I'd talk to him because I'd talk to everyone. I'm developing my communication skills and networking and enjoying my time at this. Well, I was in my teenage years. So I was like 18, 19 years old, something like that. And I remember this guy came in and I was fascinated with watches and I was looking at his watch and I said, "Hey mate, that's a cool watch. Like what sort of watch is it?" And he looked at his watch and then he looked at me and he goes, "This is an Omega Speedmaster." And I gave him his coffee and his cakes and he grabbed the cakes and he said, "If you work really hard, maybe one day you can get one." And then he walked off. And that was coming from a negative place because obviously I developed my communication skills enough to know when someone's being sarcastic and smart towards me. So that made me pretty mad and that really put a fire under me. And in my head, I was like, I'm going to get the best watch that I can get one day. So what did I do? I started looking at watches. I started watching watch videos. I started going to the stores. I was trying on all the expensive watches at the stores that I couldn't afford. I was on a pretty low wage working in a coffee shop. Fast forward 3 years later, I got a better paying job, a more corporate job. And I started wearing suits and I worked hard enough that I could afford a Rolex. And it was a Rolex 16570 with a black face with a steel band. And I started wearing it. It's one of the understated watches. It's probably doubled in price since I bought it and I sold it as well. But I was wearing the watch And I went to the old coffee shop that I was working at. This is a 100% true story. And I went to the bar to order my coffee and cake. And then who do I see next to me? I see the Omega Speedmaster guy. And I kind of moved my jacket so my watch was showing a little bit. I was a bit of an idiot. And I said to the guy, "Hey, how's it going? I haven't seen you in a while." And he said, "Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. I take it you're not working here anymore." I said, No, I'm doing something else now. And he said, "Oh, wow." And then I saw him look at my watch. And then I said, "Oh, yeah, I got a new watch." And he said, "Oh, what's that?" And I go to him, "This is a Rolex. Maybe one day you can get one, mate." And then I walked off. That was the best feeling. When I was like 22 years old, I just felt unbreakable. All right. Now, I'm not saying that you need to constantly be using hate as a driving factor, because it is a strong driving factor. If you hate something or if you love something, it's going to drive you one or the other. But sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes you are going to get frustrated because of judgment and people telling you can't do things and people telling you that you're not good enough. And sometimes it is unavoidable. This is life. It's not going to be all roses and harmony all the time. There's going to be some crap. But the way I saw it, I wasn't going to feel inferior, and I wasn't going to tell myself, "You know what, he's right. Like, maybe one day I'll get one." I know he meant I'm never going to get one because I'm working at this coffee shop. It'd take me, if I didn't eat anything for 3 months and I didn't have any money spent, then I could have bought one. But that's not what was going to happen. I needed to think outside the box. And I wasn't thinking day and night about this guy either. It was just that circumstance where the opportunity came up for me to remind someone that I proved them wrong, and I did it. And that is a really simple example of getting unbreakable confidence, by proving the haters wrong. And you don't have to confront haters down the track, because actions speak louder than words. People will see your success, but they're not going to see the hard work. And the hard work is going to consist of failure and judgment and embarrassment. So you've just got to push through that, because the success will show itself. And do it for yourself. Do it for yourself. If you know anything about bodybuilding, there's a famous bodybuilder named Dorian Yates. And he would spend all year wearing baggy hoodies and baggy clothes because he wasn't showing anyone what he was working on. He was just focused on himself. And at the end, when he did everything, when he was winning the Mr. Olympia, he showed his body on the stage when it mattered. And even during that time of training, he probably already had those successes, but he did not care about validation on the process. He was just doing what he had to do, being his own motivation, being his own judgment, and he wasn't caring about external factors. Only at the end, when he was being judged, because that's what it is, you're in a competition, you are being judged in order to put you in a classification, in order to rank you. But throughout the process, he avoided the judgment. And that's something you can do too. You can just train and practice and develop in the shadows and be your own judge, your own critiquer, and just work on it yourself, and maybe have a mentor or a coach helping you on the side. But that's just a part of life. There's going to be judgment, and you can choose to do what you want with it. And that's, in a nutshell, if you compare your idea of what's good and someone else's idea of what's good, you can run into some risks. And if people are judging you and they're basing it off what they think, whereas you're trying to achieve something in a different way, it's like music. There's so many genres. Some people hate pop music. Some people love rock music. Some people hate rap music. They love jazz. Some things are based on opinion. So if you're comparing opinions, they're just opinions. It doesn't really matter. It's much of a muchness. But Some opinions matter, like the judges at the Mr. Olympia. Some people know what they're talking about, and they know what something looks like when it's good and what something looks like when it's bad. So be careful who you're judging yourself with, and don't necessarily push yourself into potential judgment and let that judgment drive you into a negative mindset. And don't get held up in that failure mindset, because these things can slow you down. You don't want to get slowed down. You want momentum. If you're training, if you're developing these skills, you want momentum so you can excel. Forget about the failure. Learn it, refine, repeat. If you stick to repetition and refinement, if you find yourself, find out the way you learn and pair yourself with a mentor that is strategically teaching you in the correct way that you learn, and then you repeat and refine, develop your communication skills, all of this together is going to put you in a position where you can be that guy in the bar. You can be that guy leading the sport team. You can be that guy with the aura that you look at now as confident. And in the future, people can look up to you and they can say, wow, I want to be just like him. Keep it up. Do it.